want you to stop worrying about if you are good enough, if you're ready, who's watching, or whether or not you'll succeed. Because I promise you, the journey alone is so incredibly worth it. Whenever I talk about the impact that social media has had on my life, people tend to assume I'm talking about the fact that I quit my very secure 9-to-5 to pursue this full time, or that I was able to make 6 figures last year as an influencer, or maybe even the fact that I haven't had to pay for beauty products in quite a long time. And while all of those have absolutely been life-changing experiences, the true impact that creating content has had on me runs so much deeper. And it started to take effect long before I passed the 10K mark on Instagram, before I had even started YouTube, and back when I was still balancing this thing with my day job. And I'm sharing it all in the hopes of helping people see the brighter side of social media and how experimenting on it and posting on it now can have an unbelievable ripple effect on the rest of your life, even if it's not something you want to make a career out of. So I'm going to break this ripple effect down into 5 categories: self-discovery, connection, confidence, chronicling, and the unimaginable. As if I could have imagined any of this for myself to begin with. And if you learn to measure your success as a creator by the first 4, I think you are going to absolutely love the ride of pursuing content. But first, in order to really grasp how much content, social media influencing has changed things for me, we need to understand who I was before I started. And if you're like, I don't care about who you are as a person, just give me the benefits of content creating, you can skip ahead. Timestamps will be below. But just know you're missing like a critical part of the story here. The year was 2016. I was someone who felt a bit cast out at sea, moving along however the tides moved her. I was a hard worker, but for most of my life, I had just gone with the flow of whatever was expected of me. I didn't feel like the decision maker in my life. Even job promotions and switching of careers had mostly been initiated by somebody else. And as an introverted dreamer with a lot of feelings, the only thing I really wanted to do was write and escape into storybooks. And overall, I think I just felt very alone and misunderstood, despite outwardly being very positive and agreeable and never doing much to make others understand me. And finally, just to really paint the scene in the case that maybe you can relate to this, growing up, your girl was not in the popular groups. Self-esteem for most of my life was on the floor. As a child, like the only things that I felt decently confident in were my writing abilities and my dancing abilities, the latter being something I had pursued seriously until I was 18. And I really had only previously ever taken and posted a single selfie, which I had ended up getting clowned for when I posted it on Facebook. Am I showing my age? And that traumatized me moving forward. So, how did I become this person now, whose job it is to show up online, presumably talking to you all with ease, who has 62,000 photos on her phone, 80% of which are selfies? Well, it began when I started to transition from relaxing my hair, chemically straightening it, to accepting its natural texture. And even this initially felt like a passive thing, like something that was happening to me because I was a broke student unable to afford relaxers here in Canada, rather than it being me one day deciding all empowered to reclaim my natural beauty and take a stand for the natural hair movement or something. But because I was inspired by all of the YouTube videos I was watching and the blogs I was reading to help me along my own journey, I started to think, well, I like writing. Maybe I can make a blog reviewing products, sharing the methods of styling and washing that have worked for me. And hopefully I could help somebody who shared my hair pattern, my hair texture, along their own natural hair journey. And there was the ultimate decision that set my new life in motion. Which brings us to benefit number 1. Self-discovery. As I started to build out my blog and set up my social media platforms, I learned a lot about myself and my desire to learn, become an expert in things. The fact that I was a bit of a perfectionist. Something I never really thought I was because I always associated perfectionism with people with type A personalities who were super organized and did well in school. Starting along this journey unlocked interests that I never even know I had or never even would have considered or tried pursuing or dabbling in if I hadn't tried to start creating content. It first began with the dorky things like website building and learning how to design and customize my website. Then I started dabbling in photography. I started playing around with a camera because I wanted to have high quality photos on my blog. But I ended up loving it so much that I started doing creative shoots with my friends, my family. I started photographing events for people as a favor and even started dabbling in couples photography. And fast forward to now, I've unlocked a whole new obsession with like video and editing and color grading. You really don't know what you'll fall in love with until you experiment with different things. And the beauty of navigating social media and content creating is that it requires you to wear many hats: copywriting, editing, digital marketing. And for women, it even has us dabbling more into makeup artistry, fashion, skincare, as we figure out how we want to show up on screen. And getting the opportunity to test drive so many different skills and things at once is such a great way to discover hidden interests within yourself. And it's also incredible just how transferable all these different skills are. So not only are you picking up new hobbies and things that bring you joy, but you're also building out quite an extensive resume. When I quit my day job, I think a lot of people were like, oh, what are you gonna do if it doesn't work out? Like, how are you going to re-enter the job market? And I said it then and I stand by it now, but I now have so many more skill sets to bring to the table. There are so many more job opportunities available to me now than there were when I only knew what I knew at my 9-to-5. So as I kept posting to social media, picking up new interests and refining them as I went, I also started to build out a sense of community, truly using social media as it was intended, to be social. I gush a lot about community on my platforms, but I don't think I've ever tried to really explain how profound it's been to find my people after feeling so misunderstood, lost, and disconnected. I think that social media really has the power to unlock 3 different levels of connection for people. So the first is that it allows you to connect with people who share your identity. For me, that was a connection to the Black community. When I tell you, growing up in Vancouver, I could count the amount of Black people I knew on like a hand and a half maybe. And that count included my mom, my brothers, and my grandma. So needless to say, I felt pretty disconnected from the diaspora. But when I started my natural hair blog, I followed and was followed by so many Black women and men across the world. I suddenly felt so seen by and connected to those who were experiencing similar frustrations, struggles, and joys. It was like a door had opened up to a whole new world. And this truly just happened naturally from me coming online and sharing my own story about my identity, and in seeking out stories from others. Then the second level of connection is connecting to those with shared interests. Something that kind of transcends whatever your identity is. This is more aligned with like your hobbies. In 2019, I started a whole other blog, Twitter, Instagram account, purely for fun to connect with the writing community on the internet. As I alluded to earlier, writing has always been my first love, with my oldest dream being to publish a young adult fantasy novel. So I made a whole online presence to talk about the books I was reading, the stories I was wanting to write, the struggles I was having with my creative process. And through that, I have found some of the coolest, most aligned friendships I have ever found to date. And most of these actually started on Twitter and extended to FaceTime calls and real life meetups. And I feel like this really goes to show that social media or posting online can really change your life, regardless of if you are trying to make it a career or not. Because yes, while I do want to make writing a professional pursuit of mine, I wasn't posting writing and book content in the hopes of becoming a bookish content creator. It was just for the sense of connection. And the third type of connection I think that social media can offer you is a little bit counterintuitive, but it's the ability to like transcend your echo chamber and connect with people all across the world with a bunch of different perspectives and lived experiences. Don't get me wrong, social media is absolutely an echo chamber. If you've watched The Social Dilemma, you know that the nature of it is to lock you into this specific perspective and make you think that all sane people think like you and everyone else is wrong or some crazy outlier. But ironically, my journey as a content creator has somehow broken down these barriers. I've especially noticed this as I've started to take content creating full time and attend a lot more events where the only thing I might have in common with some of the other attendees is the fact that we create content online. We have different niches, different lifestyles, different audiences, which means we're all quite likely to have different worldviews and outlooks. Yeah, I think if you're being really intentional about how you're using social media, you can use it to be exposed to people all around the world. And I feel like it's just such an incredible way to hear other people's stories, understand how they see things. And I think that it's just been able to instill even more understanding and empathy than I might have if the only people I interacted with day to day were the people that maybe I went to school with or work with. And then next, the confidence boost that content creation has given me. I think that confidence really comes from a place of self-understanding and self-assurance, and continuously putting myself out there, stepping out of my comfort zone, engaging with strangers has made me just feel so much more secure in myself. And this wasn't an overnight thing. It wasn't like, okay, here I am coming on the internet, not caring what anybody has to say, not worrying about being judged or who's watching. It's something that is like a muscle that you need to build up with time. When I first started creating, I feel like I was shouting out into a void, so I was always really nervous about who it might reach and how it might resonate with them. But as I've moved along on this journey, I have been able to hone in on my ideal audience, who I'm speaking to. So now when something doesn't resonate with somebody, I'm usually not bothered by it because they weren't my target audience anyway. Like if my friends or family don't watch my stuff or engage with it or support it, it's fine. They're not my target audience. They're not the people I'm trying to reach. That's where I think like the self-assurance really comes into play. And because the job of being a content creator requires a lot of introspection and self-analysis, I now know what I'm good at. I know what I bring to the table, the value that I offer. And I'm also perfectly aware of the opportunities and shortcomings that I might have. And the coolest thing about this like self-assurance and confidence is that it transcends social media. I have found that it has enabled me to walk into any room with my head held a little bit higher. I honestly don't care very much about people's perceptions of me because I know that I'm being authentic in who I am, and if somebody doesn't like that authenticity, then that's not somebody I'm really meant to form a connection with. And for anybody who is looking to take content creation more seriously and pursue it as more of a career, I think that that decision just 10x's your confidence. Like I went from somebody who was terrified of asking for payment from a brand or challenging rates to somebody who is a very confident negotiator. I went from being a complete pushover and people pleaser. Don't get me wrong, I'm still like quite a bit of a people pleaser, but I'm now one who is pretty good at enacting boundaries, and that came as a natural byproduct from like working with all of these different brands and having to set up boundaries and just learning how to set expectations with people. And then chronicling. Creating content has allowed me to truly document and chronicle my life. Social media is a time capsule, and I know some people might cringe at that, thinking like, oh, I can't believe I said this thing on the internet, or like I looked this way, or that I thought this fashion look or this makeup was on trend. But as a nostalgic person, I just find that so beautiful. Yes, we technically have these time capsules with our phones, with Apple reminding us that we did X many years ago with XYZ, but it's not the same as a curated story in our own words. Whether it's a blog post, a YouTube video, or a simple image with a caption, we have more space to really share how we were feeling at that moment, what we were thinking, some of the backstory to it. And I don't know, some people might think it's narcissistic, but I love going back through old blog posts and old YouTube videos and just watching and really understanding my past self better and see and reflect upon different parts of my own journey. Yes, you can technically make things for yourself. Like, there doesn't have to be this public posting aspect to it, but I find that the idea of posting online just gives me a little bit of extra motivation. And we can't forget that documenting our own story does have an impact on others. I started out with the intention of documenting, chronicling my natural hair journey, but that documentation helped out others who saw themselves in my experiences and struggles. It doesn't matter what story you have to share, there will always be somebody out there that will resonate with it. Now let's end on the unimaginable, because I don't feel like I could make a how social media changed my life video without talking about the mind-blowing opportunities, the flashy stuff, the reasons that people tend to want to become content creators in the first place. But I don't want to put too much weight on this category because it's so unpredictable. And I think the true beauty behind all of these different experiences I'm about to cover is that I really could have never planned for them. I didn't start creating content in order to live these experiences. They just came up by nature of me posting online, continuing to do the work, and somebody out there happening to notice. So yes, of course, content creating changed my life in that it brought me a sustainable income. That one I think you kind of can plan for. Like, that is kind of what this channel is about. And this sustainable income led to, of course, one of the biggest external changes, and that is my career path. I went from a job that I thought would be my forever job with a great pension, mat leave options, like the works, to working 100% for myself, experiencing a type of freedom I thought I could only ever dream of. And this freedom unlocked so many extra things. It allowed me to spend more time with my husband. He had a 9-month break in his schooling where we spent every day together. He worked for me for those 9 months, and that's something I will always cherish. It opened up more time in my life to spend with my family, with my friends, going for lunch and co-working with them in the middle of the day. Content creating also allowed me to travel, to see more of the world. When I sat on my bed 8 years ago at 3 in the morning trying to come up with a name for my blog, travel opportunities were not even on my radar. My first ever all expenses paid work trip was to the UAE. We went to Abu Dhabi. I got to bring Darren along, and I got that opportunity when I had fewer than 10,000 followers on Instagram, which is why you'll hear me say up and down this channel that a high follower count is not the prerequisite to success that you think it is. I also got to experience San Francisco and Toronto for the first time, and LA and New York with fresh eyes, all because of influencing. I've had the opportunity to work with massive brands. I've had news write-ups and interviews, podcast features. I've spoken on stages big and small. I continue to get gifted insane products from brands because they see the value in my opinion and my audience. Y'all, I got a Dyson Airwrap. That was a big pinch me moment last year. And if you have watched this video and maybe you've been dabbling in content creating for a while, maybe you've got bogged down by the algorithms or feeling like you're not reaching people. If that's the case, I just urge you to keep at it and have patience, because the through line of a lot of this video is that this wasn't an overnight change in my life. It has been a compounding effect of every time I chose to come online, every time I chose to post, every time I chose to share a bit more about myself, a little bit more about my story. And it's that compound effect that has brought me to where I am now. It's that compound effect that has ultimately changed my life. I just encourage you to enjoy the journey as much as you can. You have a story to tell, you have people to reach. I truly believe that anyone and everyone who has ever thought about doing so should just start posting content. If you want some guidance for doing so, watch this next. Thanks for watching, and until next time.